Welcome to this episode of When Friends Come Over. I am joined by my friend Jordan Hester in Georgia currently. And I'm so grateful for you, Jordan. And I know this is a topic which is way too big. And I was very broad in my, hey, Jordan, do you want to talk about expectations on my podcast? So apologies for that. But this will be one of, I'm sure, many that we will talk about because expectations within friendships is such a big thing. So I just wanted to start off and especially start off talking with you about it because I know we've often had conversations about it. So thank you, Jordan.
Sure, my pleasure. So excited to be here, Hannah.
And okay, I want to kick off by starting and asking you, why do we have expectations?
Whew. You would start with a great question, wouldn't you? um, well, according to the internet, expectations. No, just kidding. But I did. I looked up expectations and I was like, what is the definition? Because I think even for two people like you and I that have had these conversations before, we would define expectations differently. And so a few keywords that stood out were just that expectations are our assumptions. They can be our assumptions and kind of what we assign value to or assign our experience to. Um, and as the age old saying with assumptions go, we know what happens when we assume. And so I think that's why we have expectations, is to really kind of set and share where our mind is, where our thought processes are, and how we can kind of go, okay, I'm here. Where are you? Let's kind of bridge that gap, if that makes sense.
So, I mean, I guess that says what they are. Do you know for us then where we have them formed in us from?
Ooh, I don't.
Okay. I guess because as I was thinking about that, I was like, actually, why on earth do we have expectations at all? Like, I
I'm
mean,
just, yeah,
I get the importance of them, but I'm also, I guess, as well, it was just making me think as I've, been thinking about this topic of, you know, then the whole thing about it and would love your opinion on it is like, is it good to have no expectations? Is it good to have low expectations? Is it good to have high? Like, I guess navigating
yeah.
when is it good, especially when it comes to friendships, because I think, I don't want to go to a friendship as I would go to a job role of going, these are my expectations.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just curious, what would you say are your thoughts on low versus high expectations when it comes to
Oh,
friendships?
good. And no expectations. I think
I
that
know, yes.
has been a key topic, with some of our mutual friends. We've had this conversation this year of going, I don't think I have expectations. And I was like, wait a minute, do you not? Because I feel like I do. And I can't be the only one in this friendship that has expectations, can I? And then start to spiral. Am I bad for having expectations? Or am I hitting the mark for this friend? Are they not hitting this mark for me? And so I think it is important to understand where the expectations are. I think it's also important to have realistic expectations, and so for me, and you and I have had this conversation just with different stages, different levels of friendships. People are in different seasons, and so
Hmm.
I realize that a lot of my friends and the people closest to me are married and a lot of them have kids. And so I can't have the same expectation on a friend of mine that is a husband or a wife that I can those of my friends that are single, because they're having to navigate and have the opportunity to care for other people. And so those expectations are going to look different. And so I think we can have too high and I think we can also have too low of expectations. And that is such a beautiful but brutal, so a brutal, if you will, thing to navigate of just going, okay, why are my expectations of this person here where my expectations of this person are here? And I think
Hmm.
familial connections throws in a different twist. But then in this gist, when we're talking about friendships, I think we have some friendships that do feel more like family. And so those expectations may shift a little as well.
When do you think in a relationship it's even healthy to start having expectations?
It's funny. It's funny you ask that because I was like, well, maybe it's at the beginning. Um, you and I haven't even got to catch up on this, but I met a stranger stopped me in the coffee shop a few weeks ago and like interrupted with a simple question. That simple question turned into 2 hours of a conversation. And so for me, we've now had coffee a few times since, but he has had this awareness of like, hey, I'm so sorry I'm running behind. That's not being respectful of your time. That's not loving you well. And I'm like, that's a really brilliant expectation to be entering into a friendship with, to be so new. Does that make sense? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I think it's never too early to have expectations. Maybe I'm a painfully relational person, and so I think I come into any kind of relationship that I'm like, there's something here, or I want there to be some sort of established community, connection, friendship, bond, with that, whether they're intentional or not, which this could be another question or another podcast episode, like intentional expectations versus unintentional expectations. And that's such a fine line. Um, and so let me not get too far off the trail. Bring me back if I am. But I think it's natural in any kind of relationship where there is consistency or the dreaded routine. I think expectations come into that of going, well, I know I'm catching up with Hannah, so I expect that there's going to be really good questions. I expect there's going to be story, and those aren't bad things, but like they're kind of subconscious of me going, well, I know to expect that and I look forward to it. So,
You know what? I just really love that you said that. And I think, like, to me, it's just consistency is such a good thing, I think, to recognize that actually that's when it's good to start having expectations, is when you have that consistency with someone, you do recognize that's when I've started to add the expectations. So I think even you just giving that language has really helped me go, oh yeah, that's actually really healthy to have expectations then, because if you're choosing to give time to this person of your own time and recognizing that that's because, yeah, oh, yeah, thank you so much for saying that, because that's helped me and myself know, yeah, that's a
love it.
really healthy, that is healthy to start putting expectations on yourself. So I think expectations is about respecting yourself, uh
Right.
because you value that. So yeah, I guess
And
I'm just
sharing
letting that
value.
going.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah.
hit the nail on the head, Hannah. I mean, you and I went to Disney with our friend was it a few months ago already? This year. We went this year. And I also went out west with one of my best friends for a birthday trip. And so, one of the expectations that you had shared with Disney was like, hey, I tend to be the planner, so I'm here. I have thoughts, but like, I would ask you questions. I was like, here's the two parks we're going to. Here's like the lists of rides that I think, and you're like, I trust you. I really don't have a preference. And I was like, okay, if that is your expectation, I can adjust mine, knowing that you're not, you don't have this expectation, so I can
Yes.
communicate. And so even with
Right.
the trip out west, my friend wanted me to plan that. And so I was like, this is your 30th birthday trip. Like, do you have expectations? Because I know I had expectations for my 30th, and it happened in 2020 when the world shut down. So there's some, little PTSD coming into 2023 planning a 30th. And I was like, I just want to ask questions to
Mm.
make sure that I'm gauging where you're at and not one over planning it, because that's
Mm-hmm.
just can sometimes kill joy.
Mm-hmm.
To make sure that that there's fun to be had, that you have a general ballpark idea of what their vision or what their dream or hope is.
Mm-hmm. How would you communicate, because you're so good at communication? I know that's a lot of your background, a lot of your passion. Is how do you find communicating healthy expectations within, their consistent friends, without it coming across as too controlling, too needy, too intense, which are three things that I struggle with, for sure. So from your experience of even maybe how I communicated mine, but how would you say is a really good way to communicate it without trying to, I guess, come across as those three energies?
For sure. I love that you refer to them as energies, because that's what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just I've probably said this 5 times and we'll say it 15 more times. Ask questions and ask better questions. So even one of our friends that you and I share, whenever she comes into town, she's much more of a slow riser. I'm much more like, okay, I'm awake. I need coffee. Let's go. Let's go to a coffee shop. Let's go here. Like the day is alive, so I'm here. Let's go. And she needs a little more time, and so I have learned from, whenever she'll stay with our family, there was one time where I was ready to go. I was like, hey, so we're going to go to this place. She's like, mm-hmm. And so the next time, we had the conversation of like, I just need maybe 45 minutes to just ease into the day. And so
Mhm.
that helped me go, oh, so that is whether that's her routine, it's consistency, or an expectation or a need. So moving forward, the next time she stayed with us, I was like, hey, how would you like tomorrow to look? I would like to get coffee at some point, maybe do breakfast. I know you talked about going on a nature walk. So like, how would you like that day to look? Because that way it's more of an invitation into collaborating on those expectations of going, okay, two people are coming together.
Yeah.
Jordan comes with his expectations. This friend comes with their expectations. There's already differing expectations. So
Yeah.
let's come to the table, kind of talk it out. You don't have to like develop bullet points, 3-page essay of what you're going to do, but have a general goal or a target.
Right. But then when does that come where you end up serving the other person's expectations more than your own?
Mm, I think that's I think that's dependent upon the level of friendship, to
Right.
circle back to what we were talking about with those that are married, have kids. Like we know, I think I've shared this with you. I view friendships as like there's just not that many 50-50 friendships in the world. I think that's kind of an
Hmm.
unrealistic expectation. And so the scales will always, do what scales do, level out, hopefully.
Hmm.
And there will be seasons
Yeah.
where, like one of my best friends, he has 3 kids. And so I know that his schedule is completely bonkers. And it's been that way for as long as I've known him. So I've
Hmm.
always been able to give a little more. So whether that's, 60-40, the occasional 70-30, but because I see there's value in that, I'm able to
Right.
adjust and go, I value that friend enough to meet them and kind of bend to their expectations because I know that that scale will eventually level out to some
Sure.
degree. But it's if the friendship's always like this and the expectation you're
Yeah.
constantly having to go up, I think that's when we have to assess and go, am I being truly self-sacrificial or am I being self-sabotaged by
Yeah.
ignoring mine for yours?
What does unspoken expectations look like for you? And do you think that it's, I guess, healthy to have them? Just yeah, unpack with me a little bit what that looks like for you and how you think that they can damage a friendship
For sure.
and but also when you think that they, I guess, are good to have in a friendship.
Yeah, I love it. I think expectations happen naturally, period. I think we can say with the best of intention, oh no, I don't have expectations, or I don't really have expectations for that. But if we really examine ourselves and our heart in that, I think we do. I think we've lowered our expectations of going, it is what it is. It'll be what it's going to be. And I think there's some wisdom to that of having a healthy level of expectations. But I think when it comes to unspoken expectations, it can be dangerous. I think expectations and boundaries, there's probably some crossover somewhere. But like boundaries, they're for us. So if we don't communicate our boundaries, how is someone going to know? Is that a topic we can discuss? Is that something that they're
Yeah.
comfortable going into in public, in a coffee shop, to talk about grief, to talk about whatever they're going through?
Yeah.
And so with expectations, I think it's kind of like a personal roadmap that we almost have to be willing to pull up in a friendship and go, hey, look at this with me. If we're going to continue to
Mm.
navigate this thing called life, I need you to have understanding of me. In our heart of hearts, I think we can want to go, oh, they're my people. I don't have expectations.
Mm.
I'm not trying to speak for everyone, but I think we do. I honestly think we do.
Yeah.
And so I think we
Mm.
can get ourselves into trouble when we're going, well, I don't want to have expectations on people because we've either
Right.
been burned by expectations that were too high, burned
Hmm.
by expectations that were not communicated. And so we're like, I just want to be the best friend possible. I want to be low key, just come hang out. But even in that, there are expectations of going, oh, it's Jordan. He can just come over and like, it's chill.
Mm.
Or I don't have to entertain, or I don't have to like be on, which are all wonderful things and so true. But that in itself is an expectation, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think we just have to be willing to go, hey, can we talk about this? Like, I expect, as you know, and Hannah, this
Yeah.
goes for you as well. Like, as one of my friends, I expect you to call me up if I'm doing
Hmm.
something that you're like, I don't know if that lines up with who you are, you know, or I
Right.
expect you to celebrate with me. I expect you to ask me questions. Um, and not all of my people do, but like I
Yeah.
expect people that want to do life with me to want to do it so deeply and in such a rich manner that like with that comes, okay, well, you've got to show me that you're interested and not let me be the one that's asking all the
Mm.
questions or the one that's always celebrating or doing this. And that's hard. I will say there's been some
Mm.
disappointment with friendships in the past where I'm just like, I expected far too much
Hmm.
of that person. Um, Recently, even, you know, when my dad passed, there was a friend that had been super close. And I think being years removed now, I'm like, I think there were expectations that they took on themselves that I never communicated audibly.
Hmm.
But I think they knew my heart well enough and knew
Hmm.
what I was looking for in friends and also what I needed in that season. And I think that they just were like, that's not, it's unobtainable. And so rather than having a conversation of going, can we recalculate? Can we get back to the drawing board? They just ran. And so for
Mm.
me, it was a hard pill to swallow of going, okay, there's two people in every relationship. And so whether or
Hmm.
not I had expectations, they were clearly felt expectations.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Can
and then I
I
was,
my head in a great way was just like, and I know I love that about our friendship is that expectations and conversations are just so hand in hand, aren't they? It's just such a partnership. But as you were saying that and just circling back to it, I just want to acknowledge that I love that at the start of this you said, you know, when we have a conversation, you're expecting stories and good questions. And I was like, not that that was necessarily unspoken, but I was like, oh, I get that that would be an expectation because
mm,
that is something that has been so consistent throughout our friendship that
right.
actually I was like, wow, that is, and am I okay with that? That that's how Jordan experiences me. Do I want to change any of that? Am I still okay with that? But actually, I mean, I am. I know I love that about our dynamic, but I guess it was just so thank you for saying that. That's such a great thing for me to know. And my expectation for sure is always a sense of I know that I'm going to be celebrating life in some way whenever I show up and talk to Jordan. That's something that I know to expect. My tradition that I've started in my podcast
Love
is I
it.
want to give everyone a scenario and how that they would handle that scenario. And so the
Okay.
scenario I want to give you, Jordan, is about you've been in a friendship for quite a while and you recognize that you have been reinventing yourself, but that has also come with recognizing that you need to shift some ways of how you've shown up in a friendship. And the
Mm.
and yeah, what advice would you give to someone who goes, my expectations have changed on or how you experience me? I want to I need to let you know that I need a little bit more. Are you okay with that? So I guess like how do you reinvent yourself in a friendship and recommunicate expectations to someone else who normally would expect something different from you?
That's good. That's such a good question and challenge, if you will. 10 years ago, first example that comes to my mind, there was a friend and I, we were working together. And so we just became instant friends. Like she's one of the funniest people I know. Humor was like her thing. One of her favorite compliments was tell me I'm funny. And so just of joy to be around, right? Everybody wants a funny friend. and sarcastic and sassy, like all things that you playful, things that we love and admire. But I think even at that stage and age of my life, I was like, this is fun, but like, are you okay? Is there depth here? Like what? Ha ha ha! But also like, how are you actually doing? And so for me, I was in this spot of going, okay, people have experienced me and expected me to be in this way, but I also see there's this part of me that I want to get into to do deep conversation and have the like uncomfortable. Are you really okay? Can we process together? But that and humor can sometimes butt heads. We
Mm.
deflect. We use humor as a tool to just go and scene. Um, and so I remember I was talking to her one day. I was like, "Hey, I really think you're funny, and I love getting to laugh with you. But if this is going to be like a dynamic friendship, I'm going to need a little more depth and a little more substance." And that was hard. That was hard for me
Mm.
to go, "Hey, this is my expectation. Would you like to meet me there?" I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the beauty of expectation is it's an invitation. And so
Yeah.
thankfully, this friend still to this day, she'll be like, I just can't tell you how seen I was in that moment because yes, I do want to be known as funny because I am funny, but like you also saw through the barriers that I had. And so you
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to show up fully and shift those expectations. She was always expected to be the funny one, to come up with a laugh to break the uncomfortable moments or the awkward silence. I was like, that's fine, but I expect you to let that guard down when we're together as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I know that's a brief synopsis, but I would say application now is just again having a heart to heart, a direct conversation of expressing your needs, and
Mm-hmm.
within some of the personality tests that you and I both have taken, I am not great at expressing or asking for needs or wants. And it is something that I have had to challenge myself in, to grow in, to develop, to have people hold me responsible and accountable for going, hey, thank you for checking on me, but flip the script, turn the table. Like, how are you? You're going to ask
Mm-hmm.
these great questions, but let me ask you those same questions.
Yes.
And it's vulnerable. It's being
Yeah.
vulnerable enough to go, hey, I care for you and I expect maybe more. I expect something different than what is presented. Is that something you
Mm.
can supply or provide?
Yeah. I think even from this, it's triggered something in me, and I hope anyone like listening or watching is just in themselves recognizing that maybe it's just something, a good reminder within your own friendships to celebrate the expectations that we have in others. And almost like as you said, the expectations, it was a great reminder for me to go, am I still good with being the person who asks good questions, but also recognizing that those are for certain friendships too, that I
Right.
don't necessarily want to be the person who always is known for asking questions in every relationship, but
Oh,
when it's with certain people. So recognizing that with our dynamic, I'm like, oh, I love that. That's exactly what I love this, like about our consistency, but recognizing I don't necessarily want that in every single relationship.
can I,
So
can I,
finding that balance. Yeah.
oh, I'm so sorry. I was going to
No, you,
say, if I can pull from a story that we had when we were at Disney, I brought that deck of cards that are just like great questions, maybe deep questions, and I shared that with somebody else, and they were like, "You had deep conversations in a Disney line?" And I was like, "Absolutely. What else is there to do?" But I'm aware that not everybody wants to be in line for a ride and be like, "All right, Hannah, now what?" And I remember this question. What do you think it is that puts the sparkle in my eye? What? Not everybody wants to go to that place, and you have to be okay with that. So it's
mhm.
easier for me to have this expectation of like anyone that comes into my presence or proximity has to meet me here. I think that is a foolish
Yes.
place to be of going, it's my expectations or the highway. That's just not,
Yeah.
doesn't make for a great approachable friend.
Yeah. Speaking of, you know, friendships, expectations, the dynamics that we have towards each other, and I think it's so good for me to recognize that I want to work on them in family relationships, in friends, and, all of that kind of thing. I'd love to know, how do you manage not allowing, or what's your tips, thoughts on past disappointments not step into new relationships when it comes to expectations?
I think it takes self-awareness of going, okay, example from what I shared earlier with that friendship that I think just had these expectations that were not communicated 3 years later. And I'm going, okay, I see how that went. How can I make sure that that doesn't happen again? What kind of, whether it's boundaries or what questions, conversations can I have preventatively so that doesn't happen again? Because for me, I tend to read a room, read a person, just kind of go, okay, what's happening here, to a fault, but it does give me a heightened awareness and a self-awareness of going, okay, maybe now isn't the time to ask a great question or a deep question. And so I think it is kind of holding those expectations with an open hand. We can do
Mm,
this all day and hold our
mm,
expectations so tightly, but if you're digging in, when you finally
mm,
release, you're gonna have little marks in your hand. And one, that hurts. But two, nothing good can get in to a closed hand. So if you hold
mm,
relationships, situations, expectations with an open hand and go, hey, if someone can come along and meet me and my hand is open, that could be a really beautiful friendship, rather than
mm-hmm.
being so guarded or protective of going, okay, that didn't work last time. How can I be constructive and fix that, rather than going, it didn't work, why didn't it work, and then fearful, and then you're just, your expectations are everywhere and it's just not healthy. So
Mm,
really leaning into that, which is some self work, and I don't think everybody wants to do that, can do that, may do that. um but if you truly value the people in your life, I think it's worth sitting in those uncomfortable moments and going, what are my expectations?
mm-hmm.
And even with the people closest to us, of going, okay, I'm sure you and I off this call, next time we catch up, we'll go, so what are your expectations? Just listen, what else do you expect of me? Like, I heard you say that. What else comes to mind?
Yeah.
For awareness and growth. And so
Yes.
I think if it's a person or a friendship you value, it's worth making it a conversation and a staple point of going,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is something in the past that I expected. What are you willing to not sign on for? Because that makes it sound like a contract. But
Mm-hmm.
like, again, to invite them in and being like, hey, I do life with people. I carry confetti with me. Is that something you can support and come alongside? Because if not, that's okay. But
Yeah.
maybe my expectations aren't for you, or vice versa.
And because that's, like, I think the thing as well with expectations, because you want to show up as yourself, and I
Right.
guess knowing what kind of, not version or layer of yourself. But as you were just saying all of this, I've just realized, actually, I was thinking, am I going to come out of this going, I don't want any expectations ever? Or am I actually recognizing the absolute gift of, an expectation is
Yeah.
that, the whole, I think I'll call this, what to expect, is, to me, I want to expect some sense of anticipation. I love creating anticipation in friendships, and I think having expectations, a good, like you said, holding my hands like this, of going, I don't know what's going to be added if I have just a foundation of some kind of expectations, that I just, I want to do life like this with some expectations. But absolutely just loved that picture. So thank you for sharing that, Jay. And just recognizing when an expectation is like surpassed. I know, actually, this is a great example that just can't come to mind, that we shared, that, I knew that I wanted to go to Disney with you, because who else, much like Jordan, you're an expert when it comes to Disney. So I knew I was in safe hands. I had great expectations of everything, and you just, yeah, absolutely surpassed them. But I didn't realize, going to Disney, I knew I was going to be playful and have fun. I did not realize that going to Animal Kingdom and riding the water ride, was it, wait, what was the ride?
The
The
Avatar
first
one?
one. Yeah. What's that one
It's like,
called?
oh, the Flight of Passage, the one.
Yes, yes. So I did not realize, I knew going into the expectation of going to Animal Kingdom with you,
Yeah,
but then riding the Flight of Passage, right? I did not realize I was going to have an incredible emotional moment on there that
right.
like was so powerful. But I think it was because I just literally knew that I had expectations of playfulness and fun and being open and wanting to, you know, not control things, that I was able to welcome in such an incredible moment. So I think that was purely because I was holding it all like this, but I
And you
had
were.
definitely expectations. Yeah.
And that's what I love, Hannah, because I even remember waiting in line for that when I was like, okay, so do you, and you're like, I don't, you don't have to tell me anything. You don't have to tell me what kind of ride it is. Like, I'm here, it's fun, I'm gonna love it. So like, just let me be surprised. And that was a healthy challenge for me of being like, I'm your tour guide in essence. I want to make sure you're prepared, but I'm like, we can over prepare in a good way too. I think for me, a big key takeaway with expectations is one, to have them, but two, to set them, rather than just going, okay, that guy said there were going to be expectations, but like be proactive, take intentionality to the next level and going, okay, what are my expectations for this person? I think, not to go too far off, but even with birthdays, I remember ever since my 25th birthday, I was like, oh, I have really great expectations and they were not met. And so that sent me
Mm,
into this going, okay, well, what do I want my next birthday to look like? And so I think the same thing can be done with friendships of going, okay, that didn't look how I wanted it to, whether it was a conversation or an adventure or a trip, whatever. And just going, I tried, let me try again. And so just
mm,
setting those expectations in a spot that serve the person you're with rather than making them serve you.
mm. Because you're so good at asking questions, and I celebrate that so much. If I had confetti, I'd throw it at you for
That's
sure. I know you have it.
adorable.
Is what, sorry, I wouldn't throw it at you, I'd throw it with you. Like,
With me, yes. We should have planned that.
what would you say to someone who wants to kind of maybe let go of some past expectation disappointments? How would you suggest that they journal to be able to set them up to win, for like new relationships and refreshing relationships? Are there any question prompts that you think that would help them?
I love that you said journal. Honestly, I mean, that's something that I've been really challenged myself is going, okay, I'm an external processor. There's a lot up here and a lot in here, and it's swirling. One of our friends calls it the washing machine, like it's just constantly going. And so when it comes to expectations, I think it's important to name them, to be able
Mm,
to go, okay, I'm feeling something. What am I feeling? And
mhm,
put a label to that, name it so that you can share it. I think even in our friendship, we've been able to talk things out to find that common language. But if there's a word, you're like, oh, I know what that means, rather than being like, okay, I think what you're saying and what you're sharing. And so just being able to
mm,
go, okay, for me, when it comes to friendship, I expect intentionality because that is something I so desperately seek to give. My heart
yeah.
cries out for it. And so intentionality is how it's kind of like a love language, like what is your love language? And so when it comes to expectations, that's one of my biggest ones is just being intentional. And so just
Mhm,
take time to write out what you're feeling, see if there's common patterns and themes of going, okay, well, when I was 23, I was feeling this, and now that I'm 33, there's some crossover. I wonder if there's an expectation that I need to assess internally, if I need to process that with someone externally, and really continue to work through it.
say when friends come over, and that's when I think it's such a great way to communicate your friendship, like your expectations, to communicate your expectations on, I guess, your, yeah, setting the tone. But I think that's what you mean about intentionality, is that you don't want to come across controlling in those situations, but you also kind of go, hey, when you guys come over, I would just love it if I'd rather say this now, and I don't want to come across as like controlling, but I just love it that when we're together, if we could just put our phones somewhere else.
Right.
Do you guys all think that you could meet me there? Let me know if not. I think that that's where it's kind of like not coming across as too intense, but also going, I hope that this sounds good because I value you all, but I would love it if we're all able to come up to this level. Do you have any other practical tips that you think would be good when you're creating that kind of environment?
When friends do come over, you also have to take inventory internally and going, okay, who are these people that are coming over? Is it my best friends? They know me, they know where I keep things in the house, like it's kind of free reign, or is it someone that I'm hosting and they're new to my life, new to the neighborhood, new to whatever? The expectation is going to be a little different. They're not, let me introduce them and show them where the restroom is, show them where the key things are so they don't have to ask. Because that can be one of the most uncomfortable conversations or questions is, where's your bathroom? And so understanding that expectation is going to look different. So know your audience to really streamline it. Just know your audience and know if that shoe is on the other foot of going, hey, if I was a guest for the first time in Hannah's house, how would I want to be treated? Or I've been to Hannah's house 85 times. I know where she hides the LaCroix. I know where she keeps the good chocolate. Like, know your audience.
So true and so accurate. And I know that we will unpack that more in another episode for sure. Jordan, I'd love to wrap it up by asking you what has been maybe like a big lesson, a lesson or two that you have taken from a past. I know you've shared a little bit, but has there been one that you've kind of gone, this is something that has really helped me from reflection, bring it into like new relationships with a fresh perspective?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to expectations and friendships is to, and I'm going to tell it to myself again, just as I'm telling it to you, is to expect people to show you who they are and for what they say to be what they mean, So rather than going, okay, well, I asked Hannah if she wanted me to give her details and she didn't. And so let that be it. Let my expectation be she shared hers rather than going, well, did she mean this? And so meet people where they're at, trust what they say, and know that if you have created an environment that is able for you to share your expectations and for them to share their expectations, you can show up fully, they can show up fully. And then this whole work of having to work out the expectations isn't a common occurrence, it's a common understanding. And I think that's the goal we all want, is to be known and seen. And so with expectations, just trust that people will show up as you allow them.
Yeah. And that's such a great way to wrap it up, and I think just to reflect on it. I hope whoever is listening or watching this, and I know when I watch it back, I'm going to be like just reminded of some great things. So I thank you, Jordan, for your time, for your wisdom, for your friendship, and for the way that I will, always know that you are about celebrating life, and I so celebrate that in you. So thank you so much, Jordan. I know that you'll be a regular. I appreciate you, I value you, and thanks for being on.
Feeling is so mutual, and I had so much fun, Hannah. Thank you.